Hello, everyone. Cornell Cruz Jr., Executive Director from the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. Welcome back to the Just Economy podcast. We have a great guest today, and we'll get to her in a second. Our guest today is Angela Moose from BSRI Institute. She's going to talk to us about what her organization does, and if you are a nonprofit organization and you need data, you need studies, you need research, this is the kind of thing she's going to do, and she's going to elaborate on all of that a whole lot better than I can. You know, you talked about the psychology, about the community psychology, and I'd like to expound on another thing, the social impact organization psychology, because you just said something very, very important, is that we as social impact organizations may not want to take the references or suggestions or even the grievances of a focus group or any survey. We might not want to take it because we feel our feelings are hurt. You know what I mean? And we're trying to do our best we can in the community, but maybe there's certain instances during that time frame, or maybe we just had an idea, but the idea was wrong, or we didn't execute it right. Because you could always have a great idea and just not execute it correctly. So how as a social impact organization, how can you also help me to be responsive to what any survey, customer, client, focus group has saying, and not take it as being, oh, they're just beating up on us because we didn't get to serve them the way they wanted us to serve us?
Yeah, that's going to come up from time to time. For BSRI organizationally, if I'm just being honest in terms of how we practice what we preach, we invest heavily in leadership coaching and executive coaching. A huge part of professional growth and personal growth is seeing failure or seeing setbacks not as failures, but as opportunities for learning. And it sounds so cliche, but it's absolutely true. This is how we grow. We're uncomfortable. We hear something that's less favorable. You know, someone interpreted something, we didn't mean it that way. We immediately get this type of body language, and it happens at the personal level and it happens at the organizational level. And, you know, for me personally, I'm not great at it, but I've learned to get better at it from practice and from coaching and mentorship and guidance that I've had from several people who are just tremendous and excellent. And I think at an organizational level, if they had the opportunity to invest in that level of capacity building for their senior staff, it would go a long way.
See, thank you. Something Angela just mentioned was capacity building as far as leadership is concerned. When I was in the military, I went to 8 million leadership schools, right? And it was constant. It was because it was a constant thing of building on your leadership. There's no such thing as a perfect leader. I'm a firm believer that for every type of person there's a type of leadership. So, and being able to accept criticism and build from that. So you just said, you know, what you just said was so important. Being able to accept that and then build from that. Because I feel you. You know, if someone critiques me, I get that little twinge in my chest, and I'm like, ugh, you know. But you got to be able to as a leader and as an organization, be able to say, okay, let's take that. Let's see how we can build on that. Either we did something wrong or we did something right, but how can we build on it? And maybe that person's talking about it from their experience, right? The either the client or the funder or even the focus group of whomever. Let's take that and build on that. I'm really glad that you mentioned about the leadership and the leadership building, and for me it's a constant thing. To this day, I still learn new ways to lead, still look at it as what other people do, how they react as well. I tell my daughters, I tell them all the time, I want you to learn two things: what to do and what not to do in any situation. So learn from people, but what you just said is so important as far as the leadership is concerned, and expanding our leadership. Our leadership should never just stop. There's no such thing as the perfect leader, and the leader never stops learning. So I wanted to ask you, I know that I was reading up on your model, and you just talked about the model that you guys use, and I'm so interested. I'm so interested that you got a degree in community psychology. I'm sorry I keep harping on it, but it's just, we look at psychology, everything as an individual and not how the community thinks, feels, reacts, right? We just don't. So how do you think your model works to help benefit the community as a whole? Especially from your community psychology.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I love that. I've just never, for some reason, I don't know why I've never heard it, but I've never heard it used in that term, community psychology.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head with your interpretation of it. That's exactly it. So our model is really designed to build organizational capacity at a sustainable infrastructure level. And we've seen the impacts of this over and over again. We see organizations that are able to incorporate data feedback loops and evaluative thinking, just thinking about data in a different way, thinking about how they're designing services, embedding that level of flexibility to take data and use it, not being so rigid in their processes and protocols. And when they can start doing this, we find that they can put in data collection roles into staffing descriptions. They can start to design their workflow to include data collection and storage at certain cadences. We're going to put out this client satisfaction survey every 6 months. It becomes part of their practice. It really becomes routinized, and the sustainable and the growth and the impact from that is just exponential. We see organizations that are able to use data to make decisions to enhance programs and services. We also see that they're able to communicate those positive findings through their marketing to their constituents, and then leverage more dollars, more funding, bigger grants, more diversified funding. From a funder perspective, we see when we're partnering with funders or government organizations, they're able to really fine-tune their funding allocations. They have their finger on the pulse of the community needs because we're providing that bridge from these social impact organizations to the funders. They're telling us what the community needs, and the funders are able to design their portfolios to meet those needs rather than deciding how to allocate funds based on a board of directors, who often is very out of touch with what the community needs. So it strengthens the impact and the fabric that is that social service sector.
I'm really gonna look to work with you guys because from a funder standpoint, one of the things that we're trying to change is our mission is to ensure that the banks reinvest into the community. And by law, the banks are required to do so, the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. And one of the things is that they're so rigid, what you just said, they're so rigid, and we're kind of, and the thing is, only thing that's regulating them as far as that's concerned is not government. The only thing that's regulating them as far as that's concerned is their board. And as you just stated, the board is out of touch. The board sees only probably what they see on TV or maybe read about in the media, and not knowing what's truly going on the ground, and not seeing the needs of an organization on the ground. So I got to figure out how to get them to understand. I need you to change your ways. You've been doing this restrictive funding since forever, and I also get that side as well. Sure. But you've been doing this restrictive funding since forever. Boy, here's what I need you to do. I need you to loosen the way you do work, and understand that in order to solve some of these issues that we have, it can't be as restricted as you have it. So I really need to work with you guys to figure out how do we get the funders to understand that there's a difference, in how you're thinking and the needs on the ground, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, I think if nothing else, these funders need to see these social impact organizations as small businesses, as what they are. They're businesses. In the same way that a for-profit business functions.
It's just a tax designation, that's it.
Exactly. They have to pay their staff at market rate to retain them. They have to offer benefits. They have to have if they have a brick and mortar, it has to be in a safe space where they can serve the community. And they have to consider operating like a business. And so funders should not treat them any different.
No.
They shouldn't say, no money for you, run on volunteers or run on paltry pay to serve the community. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we definitely have to talk about how we can put together some type of study, something that we can distribute to the banks on how they can better achieve reinvestment into the community, and how they can better achieve results from reinvestment in the community. Because we try to get them. We talk about affordable housing. We talk about mental health. We talk about all the things that are needed in the community. However, the bank says to me, or the not just the banks, but the funders will say, well, Cornell, here's $100,000, but you can only do this with it. Not to mention, okay, well, look, I got to pay somebody in order to do that. I got to pay for the staples. I got to pay for the pencils. I got to pay for the ink. You know what I mean? I got to pay the FedEx guy. I got to pay all of this. These are peripheral to this project, right? But we can't do this project without those things. Right. So trying to get them to understand how they can better and get a better return on their money, because it's all about, for them, it's all about a return on the investment. And I get that. Yeah. You know what I mean? One of the main reasons we even have a Community Reinvestment Act, and it's done as it is done right now, is regulated, and they have to be if they want to be federally insured in this country. So, I look forward to working with you and talking about those things, and maybe developing a study that we can get out to the banks to get them, okay, here's where your dollar can stretch even further if you loosen up your regulation and policy a little bit, right?
That would be really exciting.
Yeah. Some of I think we just made a connection right quick that we can do with them, with BSRI. So coming up on the end of the podcast, but I want to ask you one last question. I always leave it for last. Very seldom do I tell my guests what the question is going to be, but if you looked at any of our other podcasts, you could tell. So, I gave you all the power in the world. What would you change, and why?
Such an interesting question. I wish I would have heard more of what other people
No, I want you to think off the top of your head, whatever your passion is, whatever you think is, whatever, personal or professional, doesn't matter.
I think I would really want to reinstill faith that the people have the power, that democracy is real, and that people, that their voice is powerful, that their vote matters. I mean, we're coming up on an election, but in general, I think I've heard a lot of cynicism as of late about people voicing their ideas and their opinions, and we just spent a lot of time together talking about the importance of telling stories and qualitative data and data. And I really would want people to believe sincerely that their data, their story makes a difference, and that people care and are using that to make decisions that affect them.
Well, thank you, Angela. This has been a very interesting talk, and I hope we have a partnership that we can form in the future, because I have some ideas, and I think you guys could help me with those ideas, help strengthen our community. Angela Moose from BSR Institute has been our guest today, talking about some very, very important things. I get you, social impact organizations. I hate data too. I hate collecting it. I hate talking about it. I hate having to put numbers in. I hate it too, but there's a necessary, I don't want to say evil, but it's a necessary item that we must have. But Angela's organization is really talking about getting the stories and talking to the people behind the data. That's getting the data, I think, is pretty easy, but getting the people behind the stories is what is also important. And I think that reaches the heart better than anything else. I'm a part person that, seeing people's stories is the things that brings out all the emotions in me and all the passion in me that makes me want to invest more in the community. So I thank you, Angela Moose. Thank you so much, from the BSR Institute. She's going to be a big part of our nonprofit capacity building project going forward. So, social impact organizations, you want to help, you want to build capacity. There's certain things that we must do. So, look forward towards the end of this month. Look forward to Angela's organization being a part of that as well, and you'll be able to access her. And we thank Angela Moose. Moose. I'm sorry. I was scared I was going to say it. I was so afraid I was going to say it. This has been the Just Economy podcast, sponsored by the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. We look forward to seeing you next time. And again, thank you, Angela Moose from the BSR Institute.
Thank
you. Thank you.